Welcome back to r/Neighbors from Hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors, and if you are new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community, and without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. And the first one is titled, Downstairs Neighbor Screams at Us Through the Floor When We Are Walking Around, Leasing Office Won't Believe Us. They issued us a 14/30 for disturbing him. The banging and absolute screaming through the floor telling us to shut the F up throughout the evening and night has been going on 2 months now. About 2 weeks ago the cops got involved, we were babysitting and all we hear is,
"You're all effing dead. I'm going to come up right now and beat the complete F out of you."
My child is terrified of the bad man downstairs, so we call the cops. I believe his other neighbors came out to complain to the cops as well. This last Thursday night we had a total of 4 people in our apartment sitting at a table speaking at normal volume. We hear him banging again, just 2 times. The next morning we received a 14/30 because we are
disturbing or threatening the rights or safety of the tenant below.
We spoke to all of our other neighbors, but not his yet. They have never heard a peep from us or him, unfortunately. We have tried many times to resolve this issue with him in a civil manner. He refuses to speak to myself, female, or my female roommate. He demands to speak to our male roommate, usually calling us witches and saying,
"You need to keep your women quiet."
Our leasing office refuses to listen to our side because
he's such a sweet, quiet old man
when he interacts with them. I don't know any other way to prove to them that he is nuts aside from recording his meltdowns and our interactions. So, is it legal to record him yelling through the floor? I saw in the FAQ that in Nebraska only 1 person needs to consent to being recorded, but what if they are in their own home or standing in their doorway during a conversation? And a user in the comments suggested, record everything. And another person added, and keep calling the police when he threatens you, get copies of police reports, etc. Another person said, just as fun, when he's yelling, call the non-emergency number and let them hear it over the phone. And another user said, yes, it is legal to record in your own apartment, which picks up him in his yelling at you. And guys, I'm just curious, what would you do if you had an insane downstairs neighbor that constantly yells at you through the floor? If you have any good ideas, please let us know in the comments. Update to the crazy downstairs neighbor story. First off, thanks to everyone who took the time to offer some advice. I really appreciate it. We actually never got the chance to record him. After the police were involved, I think he finally calmed the F down. We spoke to the property manager after the 14/30 was issued, and she essentially said that they had no documentation on our end of any complaints against him, so she did what she felt was right with the info she had. All of his complaints had been verified by staff according to her. We said that is unfair, and we informed her we had complained and even had to get the cops involved. She said she was unaware of any of that. Great communication between staff, I suppose. She said moving forward, call the 24-hour line. One night we heard him and called the 24-hour maintenance/complaint line as instructed. The maintenance guy actually stopped by and spoke to us and said he had never heard anything from our apartment, ever. Weird considering the manager said his complaints were all validated. One time we had 6 complaints filed against us in one evening around 7 PM when no one was home. I called the property manager the next morning. I was pretty pissed. I made her aware of everything the maintenance guy told us, and all she had to say was along the lines of,
"Well, he knows the maintenance side of things, but not the management side of things. It is important to have a manager be involved with these noise complaints."
Then why do you have maintenance respond to them? Also, you didn't need that when he filed against us, but whatever. I told her I expected them to hold him to the same standard, and I expect to be left alone from this point forward. Now it is about 2 weeks later, and today I saw the jerk loading up all his stuff into a moving van. No more rude, sexist or straight up threatening behavior from him anymore. I feel like I can finally live in my apartment. And guys, if you enjoy stories about awful neighbors getting what they deserve, then please don't forget to like the video and maybe even post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support my channel. Thank you so much in advance. And guys, unfortunately, a small clarification for the next story. The first part of the story is only available as a too long didn't read, but the update is still fully available. I thought it is a really interesting story, so I will still share it. It is titled, Update, Neighbor Touched My Son. So a little summary of the first post that is not available anymore. Last Monday, soon after I left for night school, my son, 5, reported to my wife that our deaf and mute neighbor touched his private parts. I know the original post didn't get a lot of attention and there probably isn't much demand for an update, but I did want to thank the people who commented and maybe give some guidance on expectations for anybody who might have the horrible luck to fall into a similar situation. Also, it is just not something we want to talk about with friends/family, so call it therapy for me. Update: on Tuesday morning, the entire family went to the police station to file a report. My wife and I interviewed with an officer and detective together at first, and then my wife alone. After that, the detective contacted the county prosecutor's office. An hour or so later, we were on our way to a county facility so we could all be interviewed by a couple of detectives from the county prosecutor's office. Once interviews were over, the county detective sat down with my wife and I to let us know my son had given them some actionable information and they intended to act relatively quickly. The detective who interviewed the kids had tears in her eyes. From there, we went home. That afternoon, the neighbor knocked on the door looking to play with the kids. I opened the inner door, left the storm door closed and made it clear he needed to go away, which he did. Soon after, I went to night school asking my wife to stay indoors with the kids for the night, which she did. When I got home, she said nothing else had occurred. For the most part, Wednesday was quiet and relatively normal. We did not see the neighbor all day. Wednesday night, we came to know why. A detective called to let us know neighbor had been taken into custody on Tuesday night while I was at school and would remain in custody for a few days until his hearing, I assume arraignment. Thursday morning, a woman from the state DCF and CPNP office came to the house. She made a cursory check of the house and interviewed my wife and I together. To my mind, this was actually a good thing. She was able to let us know that neighbor had been charged with 2 counts. I don't recall exactly what they are. She also provided 2 other important facts. Number 1, the neighbor had a history, albeit old, late 80s, early 90s, and in California. Number 2, neighbor had admitted the act to the detective that arrested him on Tuesday evening. From there, she advised we were entitled to have my son evaluated by a state specialist and possibly therapy if necessary. We will need to have them check in with us once a month until the case is closed on their end, and the evaluations etc. will necessarily extend the time frame, but we opted to go this route anyway. While she was there, I asked if she knew what the likely penalty was. She did not, and whether or not she thought we should pursue a restraining order. If neighbor was likely to be free again soon. She was unsure and promised to check in with the detectives on the subject. Friday, yesterday afternoon, we received a call from the county detective. She informed us that neighbor's hearing was set for Monday and that his lawyer intended to ask that he be released to his home with an ankle monitor for the period between the hearing and his trial. She wanted to ask for our input as to how hard the prosecutor should push to have neighbor remain in custody. Here's the thing, neighbor, so far as we can tell, actually lives with a family and they have small children. I advised the detective that we were okay with neighbor being home so long as he was confined to approximately his property. She confirmed that would be the case and that a no-contact order would be in place. We agreed that that was okay with us, but also said we felt strongly the family with whom neighbor lives should have input. That brings us up to date, and to be honest, I am torn. I hate what this man did, I hate that it has happened before, and I never want it to happen again. With that said, at first I was unsure as to whether or not neighbor even knew what he did. He clearly has some emotional/intellectual challenges, but he also knew, at least to some extent, what he was doing, as he admitted the act to the arresting detective. I get the feeling he is something akin to a deaf/mute Lenny from OF Mice and Men, and that tears my heart out. I don't think he really understands, and I don't want to be vindictive to someone like that. At the same time, he touched my son. If there were no clear impairment, I would want to take a baseball bat to his head, but there is, and instead I just feel like crap for everyone involved. This sucks, full stop. On a more selfish note, the Megan's Law Registry. There are a handful of homes for sale in the area. Until now, my wife and I were hopeful that more families with kids would move into the area. That hope is now over. Because Neighbor's history all predates Mega's law, he was not on the registry. Now he will be, and no families with kids will move into the area. I realized this is tangential to the main topic and pretty self-centered, but it is just one more way that Neighbor is going to make our lives a smidge worse just by existing. To repeat myself, this sucks, full stop. Sorry for the book, and if the mods see fit to remove the update, as it is not all that particular to legal matters, I understand. Honestly, I just feel a bit better getting it all down and putting it out there, thanks to anyone who reads through. And the next one is titled, They Finally Broke Us, We Moved. My boyfriend, 27, and I, female 26, moved across the country almost 3 years ago and bought our first home together. It was supposed to be our forever home. We still absolutely love the house, but we could not handle the neighbors from hell, approximately a 35 to 40-year-old couple with 2 kids, any longer. Within the first year of moving in, they had called the police/code enforcement officer/animal control 27 times. We had to leave work many times to meet with the officers to try and plead our case. Every single claim has been false. The second year the complaints slowed down, I think partially because the officers were tired of wasting their time. I stooped down to their level one time and had the police give them a ticket for trespassing on our property, but I had told them many times before to stay off the property. They look around to snoop to find things to try and complain about. After they were given the ticket, they stopped calling on us for a while, about 4 months. They waited until Christmas Eve to call in a fake noise complaint at 11:30 p.m. We were both in bed by that time because we had plans to travel the next morning. They finally broke us last month when we planned to have some dirt delivered for our garden, but were accidentally delivered sand instead. The man from the company came to pick it up and refund our money the next day, and when he was leaving, the neighbor stopped him and said,
"Hey, what are you doing over there?"
Assuming the neighbor was interested in buying the sand, the guy said, "Just picked up some sand. I will sell it to you for $30 if you want it." The neighbor said,
"Nah, are you repoing that sand?"
The sand guy looked as confused as I did and kinda laughed and said, "No, they just didn't want it." It probably sounds minuscule, but they are constantly being nosy and looking for reasons to complain. On the bright side, after all the remodeling we did on our first home and because we sold during a good market, we actually made some money on the house after selling. Enough to buy a small house in the country with no neighbors in sight. How I handled a neighbor from hell. The year is early to mid 2007. This is how I handled my problem neighbor. Throughout my entire adulthood, I've owned my own home, except for a 2-year period when my son was born and shortly after until we bought another house. During my time as a renter in a bigger town, I had very rude neighbors, middle 50s couple, fairly well-to-do, who would spy and sneer and stare constantly. Their adult children and grandkids did it too. They would stare, and once they saw you looking back, they would slowly shake their hands before turning away. They lived to my immediate right. If you so much as coughed outside, they literally seek you out to stare at you for a minute, mutter something under their breath, and then shake their head and turn away. 3 months of this and I had enough of it. Mind you, I am quite big, around 295 pounds and 6'4.5" and very imposing, and had a long biker beard at the time, and my size did not seem to intimidate them at first. So I decided it would have to be all mental. Since they were always so pissy, I decided the best attack was kindness, mind you, over the top kindness. And by the way guys, I am a biker too, but I don't have a biker beard. I am clearly missing something in my life. Either way, whenever I saw either of them looking at me, or both at the same time for that matter, I would walk/run right towards them with a loud jovial "Hi!" get very close to them and forcefully initiate small talk. The moment they would try to respond, I would cut them right off and talk over them. Everything they said I would laugh extremely loud at before they were even finished talking, to the point where they would start backing up and I would wave my arms around and act like an idiot. This was an almost daily occurrence for a couple weeks. They seemed to give me more space and were not outside staring at me nearly as often after that, until one day a close friend drove by while I was in my front yard. It took me a second to realize it was him because he was not in his own car, it was a rental because his was in the shop. The neighbors were on their front porch at the time. He beeped the horn and I looked and saw it was him, and he promptly gave me the middle finger and yelled "F you" out the window, which is something we often did to each other. And then it hit me. The neighbor saw the whole thing. I sprang into action. I yelled back, "You're dead!" to my friend in the car as he kept going down the street, ran inside, grabbed my shotgun, threw it on the front seat of my truck, then ran next door and up on the neighbor's porch where they were quite startled. I yelled at them, "Who the F was that? Did you send him? Well, he's a dead man now." They were too frightened to respond. I then ran over, jumped in my truck and lit up the rubber, pulling out of the driveway and flying down the street. I caught up to my friend a little ways down the street and got him to pull over. I shared the story with him about what I had just done. He had been well informed as to what the neighbors were doing and he almost pissed his pants laughing. He is the one who told me what the next step should be, and it went like this. I returned 20 minutes later to the neighbors still on their porch, staring at me but trying to make out that they were not, and I pretended I did not notice them. I went inside, got a large beach towel and went outside with it. Knowing they were watching me, I pulled the shotgun out of the truck and started wiping it down with the towel. After clumsily and purposely looking over both shoulders in a fake attempt to check if anyone was watching, I wrapped the gun in the towel and ran around to the back of their house. I brought the shotgun inside and put it away quickly. I grabbed one of my baseball bats and wrapped it in the towel and went into the backyard. I very loudly opened the shed and got a shovel. Making quite a racket the whole time, I could see when I came out that they were looking at me from an upstairs window in their house to see what I was doing. I dug a small hole and threw the towel-wrapped bat in the hole and promptly buried it. The neighbors never spoke to me or stared at me again. The next one is titled "Neighbor Steals Water from Drought-Stricken Australia." So, as you probably know, Australia has some hectic wildfires going on right now and is in extreme drought. My hometown has high water restrictions in place, so things like washing your car and watering your garden are a massive no-no. The water supply is scary low and there has been talk about the council potentially needing to pay for water trucks to fill it. Even though I live in another city and my parents have moved to the coast, they still own the house we grew up in my hometown and have been trying to sell it, so it has been sitting uninhabited for about 6 months. We have friends who occasionally check on it to make sure nothing has been stolen and to mow the lawns. You can imagine their shock when they received a water bill for $500. My dad went back there on Wednesday to check it out and found out that our neighbor has removed one of the pickets from the border fence and has been feeding a hose through to her yard from our backyard tap. Her backyard is like a tropical oasis, vibrant green lawn, flowers, etc. While everyone else's lawn around it is brown and dead. The bill says the amount of water used is about 200,000 liters. He has taken photos of her lawn in contrast to ours and of the removed picket from the fence and reported her to council. My dad is essentially the lawyer/investigator of our family. He is very good at stuff like this, so she is absolutely effed. We just cannot believe that in such a time of crisis, as the land burns around us and farmers struggle to feed/water their livestock, all she cares about is her effing garden. Update: the council have looked at the water usage for her house and it is dramatically low, too low to explain how well kept her yard is. She has a water tank and they looked at the rainfall over the past few months, and during the period our water usage spiked and there was nowhere near enough to have filled the tank or to sustain the garden. They agree it looks incredibly suspicious. And the next neighbor story is titled "Neighbor Steals My Mail, I Get Revenge." For the past few months I've suspected that my upstairs neighbor has been stealing some of my mail. I buy a lot of things online like books and craft supplies, and every now and then there has been small things that were meant to arrive on a certain day that never did. One day I caught her wandering around my front door, and when I asked her what she was doing, she said,
"Oh, I was looking for something. I think I dropped into your yard."
I got surveillance cameras installed a while ago, which were not noticeable to my neighbors. The camera that is pointed at my front door is not visible from the driveway, you can only see it if you are in my backyard. Here comes the trap. I purchased a few postage boxes and made up a few booby traps for her. The first one was a glitter bomb. I set up the box to make sure she would get glitter to the face as soon as she opened it. I packed it to make it look like a postage parcel, then set it at my front door. 20 minutes later, I saw her walking to my front door. She looked around, then picked up the box and walked away. My only regret is that I did not get to see her reaction when she got a face full of glitter. I have not noticed any other mail going missing after that, but she will regret if she does it again. The second trap will be much worse. And guys, unfortunately we have already reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed today's stories, and if you haven't already, please also go to patreon.com/ripeyoutube, where I upload exclusive Reddit videos starting at just $3 a month. This is a great way to support me in case you are interested, and the chance for me to become independent from YouTube revenue. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe and like the video, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.